But yeah, some more questions coming in here, which is great. If you give me a few tips to improve the score, yeah, I'm happy to go through some section one tips towards the end. As I said, doesn't have to be limited to AI, the discussion tonight. Saha sent me a message regarding my writing. Okay, so were you always good at writing? I don't know, it depends how you define being good at writing. I think I've always enjoyed writing. Enjoyed section two. Sorry, oh, I did enjoy section two in the GAMSAT, but I enjoyed English at school as well. But no, I think, look, my section two essays were a combination of just a passion for certain areas, and then just some practice and making sure I was refining my structure in the right way, I think. Cool. But anyway, the questions that you guys have is great. We will go through everything. I want to make sure that everyone's questions are answered. So keep them coming in, and we'll go through them towards the end. But for now, let's get started with what we're all here for, which is AI. Okay. So, what we're going to go through today is a discussion of how we can use this tool of AI, which is pretty new in the realm of study, in the realm of, especially in the realm of GAMSAT, and how we can use it to our advantage properly. Now, the risk here with AI, as with any new technology, is that if you misuse it, you can send yourself off on the wrong course. And I've seen a lot of students who have used AI incorrectly, who have used AI to do things that AI can't do. And I think that's a really important point, something we're going to discuss a little bit in a little bit of time, which is the limitations of AI, right? So that's something to always bear in mind. AI is not going to just replace studying. It's not going to replace, help you get from study groups. It's not going to replace help you get from tutors or friends and family, whatever it is. But it is a tool to add to your belt. Okay, it is something that you can use to supercharge your learning, and it's something that you can use to make the gruesome process of studying for the GAMSAT a little bit more enjoyable. And that's what we're going to focus on today. Okay. So just before we get started, a little bit on who I am and sort of what gives me the qualification almost to speak about what we're speaking about today. So I've been tutoring and teaching English-based subjects for over 8 years now, since about 2017, and specifically teaching GAMSAT for just under 4 years now. I scored 88 in section two, a 71 in section one, and overall 100 percentile in the GAMSAT. And I'm currently a medicine student at the University of Sydney. And I'm an avid ChatGPT user. And as I was starting to use ChatGPT more and more, I started to use it a lot for my med school exams and prep for things related to theories and everything that we're covering there. Also started to use it for my day-to-day life. I started to come across AI as a tool that I thought would be useful for GAMSAT as well. And at the same time, I started to run into students who I was teaching who weren't using it very well, okay, who were using it poorly or were a little bit confused on how to use it, right? Now, I think we're still at the very early stage of ChatGPT and Grok and Gemini and all these tools being used in the GAMSAT. And so if you're not using them already, I don't think you're falling behind or anything. But I definitely think over the next few months, over the next sitting or two, um, AI is going to start to become like a staple for students as prep cycles. And I think you'll find yourself falling a little bit behind the curveball a little bit if you don't learn how to use these tools properly. So that's the focus of today, is really to show you how you can use them appropriately, and bearing in mind those limitations as well. Okay. Let's let Menti do its thing to see if any questions have come in. Would the session be recorded? It will be recorded. So that's fine. Looks like we've got some more. Can you show the prompts for marking S2 and helping with S1? We will be going through some example prompts for both S1 and S2. So hopefully that will cover what you're asking. But again, if it doesn't, happy to answer any questions toward the end. Best way to improve reading comprehension, not a great reader or comprehender of text. It's a good question. So my suggestion on that would be the boring answer, which is practice, but deliberate practice. So figuring out firstly which particular texts you struggle with comprehension. So it might be a case of maybe you really struggle with poetry, or maybe you really struggle with, I don't know, technical texts or fiction texts, and then focusing your reader there. I think the other thing is to work out what's actually holding you back with your comprehension. So is it a vocabulary issue? Is it a pace or timing issue? Because sometimes we feel the pressure of timing in section one, and that reduces our comprehension. So that's something else to do. And then there's small techniques you can add in. The techniques that I teach in my classes for section one, things like, you do have a whiteboard and notes as well. So there's things you can do with making notes and things like that to help you along the way. But overall, I think, to sum it up, I think deliberate practice, knowing what you need to improve on and figuring out what's holding you back, and then attempting to fix that specifically is your best bet. Best way to use AI for finding evidence, we will be going through that, so that will be answered shortly. What AI models do you recommend? We will also go through that, but I may as well just answer it here. I think most of the mainstream ones would do the job. So the ones I recommend are ChatGPT, Gemini, and Grok. There are the ones outside of there. There's Perplexity and Claude, but they serve more niche purposes. For the purpose of what we're looking for in the GAMSAT, I would stick to ChatGPT, Grok, and Google Gemini. Now, all of them have a free version and all of them have a paid version. I'll talk to you guys a little bit later on about whether I think the paid version is worth it or not. In short, for most of you guys, no, okay? Especially for those of you guys that are only using it for GAMSAT study, it's not really worth it. Where it becomes valuable is if you are using it excessively or if you're using it for things beyond the GAMSAT as well. Personally, I have the plus versions for Gemini and ChatGPT. I personally find ChatGPT's responses a bit better, and I find that it is able to capture what I'm trying to ask it to do more often than Gemini does. So that's my recommendation. Not relevant to AI, but for S1, I've been keeping track using a tracker and always struggling to identify types of questions. Do you have any tips regarding the issue like this? Great question. And that's actually where AI does come in. So one of the uses of AI, I actually don't have it on the slides, but I'll quickly go through it. So many of you guys know I have a section 1 and section 3 tracker out there. If you are not aware of this or not sure of this, I will share a link in the chat before we finish up today, but it's easily findable on the Facebook groups and online as well. The value of the tracker is to figure out where you're going wrong and to identify questions and things like that. But the tricky part is sometimes you don't know what skill is being examined in a question or what question type is being examined in a question. What you can do is you can take the list of skills or question types that you're tracking. You can give that to ChatGPT, and then you can take a snapshot of the question and give that question into ChatGPT or AI as well, and it will basically be able to tell you which skill best fits it. So that's another really good use case of AI. If you're really struggling to fill out that tracker and you're not sure where it fits into, AI can be used for that as well. Okay. So we'll come back to Q&A at the end, but we'll keep moving along. So today's focus, I'm just going to go through some basics of AI use and prompt generation. We're going to go through 3 specific use cases, okay? So 1 use case per section. This is absolutely not a sort of a limit on how or what ways you can use the AI. You can use them in a number of different ways, but for what we're focusing on today, there is generative multiple choice questions with section 1, using it for idea generation and refinement for section 2, and using it for focus study and MCQs for section 3. Okay. So why are we focusing so much on AI? It's really, for me, it's about studying smarter. Okay, all of us lead busy lives. Some of you guys are still doing your undergrad. You're going to probably go back to semester 2 next week. Some of you guys are working full time. We've all got busy lives. We've all got things to do. And the less time we can spend studying, the more time we can spend doing things we love. So I like to think of AI as a tool to just make the whole process more efficient and easier. Okay, and that's what we're going to focus on as a core philosophy of what we're doing here. So again, I think it's really important to understand what AI can do, what it's good for, and what it's not good for. Okay, so what AI is good for is summarizing content and information quickly. It is good for brainstorming ideas for section 2 essays. It is good for carefully editing and rewording your writing. And it is good for creating question prompts and guidelines. What it can't do is perfectly accurately mark a section 2 essay. And this is really important to remember because section 2 essays are not being marked like any essay out there. They're being marked in a particular way which is specific to what ASO is looking for a medical student or for a dental student. Now, whilst we can give ChatGPT that or Grok or whatever platform you're using that context, it will still struggle to mark your essay directly in that way. So what you'll often find is if you try and get ChatGPT or any of these AI tools to mark your essays, they will mark your essays as if you were doing an English subject or if you were doing a humanities subject at university. So they'll focus on a lot of things that are important for writing. So they might focus on structure, they might focus on your ideas, which are really important for section 2 in the GAMSAT. But then they'll also focus on things like vocabulary, or they'll focus on things like spelling, which is not really relevant. They also won't pick up on certain important niche points that ASA is sort of looking for through the weeds of your writing, which is how you come across, which is how you present yourself as a potential medical school candidate. None of that is really what ChatGPT is inherently looking for. So you can use ChatGPT to get feedback on essays, but I wouldn't use it to replace actual feedback from your peers, from study groups, or from tutors, because they will have a proper understanding of what ASA is looking for, rather than just a broad-based essay marking framework. Now, ChatGPT is slowly getting better at memory and understanding your past mistakes, but it's still not going to be able to fully understand and identify weak points based on extensive history of your performance. So for that, you're still going to need your trackers. You're still going to need feedback from, as again, study groups or tutors, because you might do a set of questions for section 1 and you might realize that in that set of questions you did really bad in poetry. But if you've got a tracker, you'll be able to keep an eye on how you're going with poetry over the last few months as well. ChatGPT won't remember that or won't know that. Okay, and the last thing ChatGPT can't do here is generate questions that accurately fully capture the skills that GAMSAT tries to examine. So as hard as we try to create questions, they're not going to be as good as the ASA questions. So don't go in expecting these AI generated questions to be a perfect one-to-one replacement for what the ASA questions provide. They are the best quality questions out there for both section 1 and section 3. You can't get any better than that because they are literally the people that are going to make the exam on the day. What we can do is use specific techniques to get as close as we can, and we'll go through a couple of different strategies of what to actually tell and give AI to make sure that we get as close to those ASA style questions as we can. But ultimately, they're not a one-to-one replacement. So don't expect it to be. Okay.
Just a quick question.
Yep, go for it.
You're okay with that?
Yeah, yeah, of
So
course.
the previous slide in the table, you mentioned, like, well, I guess one of the things it can do is reword your writing.
Yep.
So in terms of rewording the writing,
Mm.
can that be like a positive but also a negative, I guess, because the way it writes, it's almost deceptive. It's not mimicking your natural tone. So in section 2, your personality wouldn't be coming out as it would genuinely, like on the paper.
Yeah, absolutely. And anytime you get AI to make those edits, I would absolutely caveat it by suggesting to it or reinforcing to it the importance of making it sound like you. So what it can often do is it can, let's say you paste in 600 words of your own writing and you want to edit a 50-word block of that. You can ask it to make those edits using the same style, flow, and flair that you have been using elsewhere in the essay. And it's pretty good at mimicking that. If you do just ask it to rewrite it in the best way possible, then yes, it won't sound much like you, right? The purpose of getting it to edit and reword, though, is not, for me, it's not necessarily for you guys to sort of directly replicate in your own work. It's to put in writing that maybe, because sometimes you write an essay and you kind of in your head know what you want to say, but on the paper or in terms of what you type out, it doesn't come across that way. It comes across a bit mumbled, jumbled, messy, unclear. And what you can use the AI resources for is to help you see what your thoughts would look like in an essay. And obviously, you're going to do this outside of a timed scenario. So let's say you've sat down, you've done a 30-minute timed section 2 essay, and now you're going back through and you're just thinking, like, this is crap. This is so bad. But I know what I wanted to say. This is not what I wanted to say. And that's where you can use AI to kind of help you see and get a glimpse of what it could have looked like. So you can get that inspiration. The same way that you might look at an exemplar essay to get inspiration for how a high scoring student might write about globalization or cancel culture, maybe a theme that you're particularly struggling with, you use that as inspiration. You don't go out and directly copy it because, as you said, it's not your personal style of writing. But it's a good question. And as with any of this stuff, you always have to be careful of that over reliance, which is it's a common theme, a common thread. Okay.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thanks. Thank you for that.
Perfect. All good, all good. Okay. So just in terms of like a general framework here of how we want to prompt AI, what you don't want to do is like a one word prompt or a one sentence prompt. So the general framework here that I often use basically in all my AI prompting is the RCheck method, RCEC. Um, and the four things that we want to include in our prompt generation. So we want to give AI a role. Who are they acting as? We want to provide them with any relevant context. We want to provide them with any relevant examples, and we want to offer a clarification in case the AI needs us to go more specific or to clarify any piece of detail. AI is a classic example of quality in equals quality out. So the more time you spend refining and properly prompting the AI, the better the outputs you get in turn will be. So if you're expecting to just put in 4 or 5 words and get out the exact answer and response you're looking for, it's just not going to work like that. You have to be really clear with what you want from the AI. Otherwise, it's just going to give you garbage, right? So moving into our first use case. And now we're looking at section one. So let's say you've done some section one practice. You've done some ASA questions, maybe you've done some Des O'Neill or whatever else you're using. You want to practice some more S1. You've run out of questions. You've used all the ASA questions. So you want to use ChatGPT to create some S1 questions. And so you go on AI and you type in generate section one questions for GAMSAT. Now it gives us a response, right? In fact, it's given us 5 questions. You can see it says here are 5 GAMSAT section one style questions designed to test comprehension, inference, tone, and reasoning. Each one includes a stimulus and a multiple choice question. Okay, so far so good. Then we get the stimulus and then we get the question. Now, before I go to the next slide, which is going to color this in a little bit, what is the problem with this output that ChatGPT has given us? Happy for anyone to unmute and answer.
Stimulus is way too short compared to actual GAMSAT questions that we get.
Yep, so very good. So the text itself is way too short. Okay, now you might, in an odd case, get a very short text like that. But if you're really wanting to practice GAMSAT style questions, you want something a lot longer than that, especially if it's prose. So prose is a text type that we sort of notoriously see these days in the GAMSAT being quite long, like 30, 40, 50, 60 lines long. This is 5 lines long. So this is way too short. What else is wrong with this output?
There's normally multiple questions per stem, not just one question on like each stimulus.
Yep, very good. So usually, and I don't have the full output pasted in here because it wouldn't have fit. But what it ended up doing is basically giving me one text and one question. So you're absolutely right. Typically, you would have multiple questions for a given stem. Okay. So there's a lot of problems here, both with what I've input, but also with what has come out. So if I go to the next slide, this kind of fleshes it out a little bit more. Number one, the text is not in a GAMSAT style. Okay. The question is okay. The question's actually not too bad. What best describes Clara's emotional state in the passage? That's actually not too bad. You could get a GAMSAT question like that, right? But it doesn't give us the answer. Now, okay, I could ask it. I could reprompt it. I could ask it, what is the answer to question one? But that's wasting my time. Okay. I don't want to have to keep going back and forth. It makes the whole process of spitting out the prompt too messy. So it's not even giving me a solution or an answer. Also, who chose the text type? Like, what if I don't need to work on prose? What if I'm good with prose? ChatGPT doesn't know that, so it's given me prose. What if I'm really happy with prose and I actually want to focus on other stuff? Who chose the question type? What if I'm really good at analyzing and understanding emotional state? Okay. The other thing is the text on the question is too easy. Okay. So the answer here is C. I'm not even going to ask you guys. So what we're going to do throughout the cases is there's going to be some questions and activities scattered throughout just to get you guys practicing some GAMSAT, practice as we go anyway. I'm not even going to get you guys to answer this question because of how easy it is, right? If you took the time to read the text and answer the questions, you can see C is just immensely more correct than the other 3. So there's no difficulty there. The difficulty is way off. What we usually see with section 1 questions in the GAMSAT is, yes, there is a correct option. There's probably 1 or 2 other options which are like 80% correct, and then one option that's maybe like quite a bit off. right? But here there is 3 options that are completely off, and then 1 option that's absolutely correct. And there's no, GAMSAT trap, like I like to call, or no options that are really testing the common mistakes that students make, like using biases in their answers or misreading questions and things like that. It's just too basic. Okay. So if you put this prompt into the AI and this was the output you got, and this is all you did for your GAMSAT prep, you would walk into the exam on exam day and bomb it. You would do crap because this is just not preparing you well at all. So what can we change? Thinking about the framework we just went through, the R-check framework, and based on everything that you guys know about AI, what are some things I could change here in terms of how I've prompted the AI to get a better response?
You could target specific stimulus types that you're like weak on. Like if you're not good with poems, you could ask specifically for poems.
Great.
You
Yeah.
could kind of ask for the multiple choice answers to follow a similar style to the GAMSAT where one is like really wrong and then there's like 2 or 3 that are like it's sometimes hard to distinguish which one is the correct one.
Good.
And also ask for multiple questions per stimulus.
Great. Yeah. Is there anything else we could do to fix this prompt? Anyone else?
And I think we can assign the ChatGPT as a role, like maybe you are the GAMSAT company, like that you are generating the question, or maybe
Very
you
good.
have
Yeah.
experience, I mean, something like this. Yeah.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. Okay. So let's have a look at what that might look like. Okay. So it's on the left-hand side. I know this slide's a bit confusing in format, but I had to fit everything in somehow. So this is the prompt I've given it now. Act as a GAMSAT Section 1 exam creator with the intention of creating questions which match the style and difficulty of GAMSAT Section 1. I'm looking for questions that test reasoning and deduction skills, particularly ones in poetry. I also tend to commonly fall for GAMSAT traps like bias in thinking or misreading the question. Provide the answer and solution at the end with a discussion of the right answer and also why each wrong answer is wrong. An example of text and questions I have struggled with is attached. Let me know if you need anything clarified. So this prompt is doing everything that we've spoken about with the R-check framework. It's providing a role to the AI. So it's telling the AI, you are an exam creator for the GAMSAT. Act in that way. It's giving it the relevant context. I'm struggling with this type of question. I'm struggling with poetry. I'm struggling with reasoning. I tend to follow and fall for these mistakes. I've given it an example for what I'm looking for. So I'm saying, here is a screenshot of a question I have done and a question I've struggled with. Use this as an example to create your question. So now the AI knows exactly what I'm struggling with, but it also has a tangible example to go off as well. So it's not just shooting in the dark. If I had given it in the previous stem, if I had said prose and I'd given it a text that was 60 lines long, it would not have spat out a text that was 5 lines long because it has an example of what it's aiming toward. Okay. So examples are really important. And then at the end, I've asked it, if you need anything, I can clarify. Okay. Now, some of the times the AI won't need you to clarify anything. It's got everything you needed. It just depends on your prompt. If, for example, it feels like it's kind of guessing in the dark a little bit, it'll ask you, okay, can you just let me know? Like, for example, if I hadn't added in the text type of poetry, it might have just said, is there a particular text you prefer? Okay. Quality prompt gives us a quality output. So let's have a look at the output now. Thanks for sharing the example. This is a great starting point. You've identified a common challenge in GAMSAT Section 1, the subtlety of distractor options and the tendency to read too much or too little into poetic metaphors. I'll now generate a GAMSAT style question for a poetry-based stimulus that mimics the style and difficulty of your example. It will require careful reasoning and inference, include plausible distractors, and be followed by detailed solution analysis. Okay, so let's give this a go. So we've got a little poem on the screen and we've got one question. They gave me more questions, but I've only put in one question here for the sake of this activity. Okay. So I'm going to put a poll up that you all will be able to vote into. Let's see how you guys go with this one. I'm going to give you guys another 30 seconds to pop in your answers here. Okay, another 5 seconds here, guys. If you haven't answered, just pop a guess in. Still quite a few of you that haven't answered. Okay. All right, I'm going to end the poll there. I know there's still a couple of you guys that didn't get a chance to put an answer in. Now, this is good. Okay, so most of you guys have got this one correct, which is A. So fails to see the impermanence at the heart of things. Now, with this poem and this question, you could look at the question first and then do the poem, or you could do the poem first and then look at the question. That's a matter of preference. So I teach just kind of experiment with both and see which works for you. I personally would read the poem first and read the question, but I've had plenty of students score well in section 1 that have done the opposite. So that part of it is personal preference. In terms of A as an option here, so failing to see the impermanence at the heart of things, we know that the child is spoken about in the last stanza. So we know we're focusing really heavily on that last stanza, the last 4 lines. So let's have a look at that last stanza. But from the rim, a child peers in, convinced this tiny world is whole, not knowing tides that steal and bring are etched in every tidal soul. So I would particularly focus, I think, on the second line of that stanza, convinced this tiny world is whole. So he's not seeing the impermanence. He's not seeing the extent to which this environment, this tide, the waves that are being described, the whole environment that's being described here, the ocean or the sea or whatever it is, he's failing to appreciate its impermanence or its universality, right? Its never-endingness, okay? Not knowing tides that steal and bring are etched in every tidal soul. So those last 2 lines are presenting that impermanence, but it's also presenting it as something that the child is unable to see. It's unable to appreciate. So that's why A is our best answer here. Okay, but this is a great GAMSAT question because the other options are close but not quite correct. They're testing and offering solutions and things that are, and I'll go to the next slide because this will explain it a bit better. Okay, so as I requested, it's given me the solution. It's also given me, again, it's cut off here because we didn't have space on the slide, but it's also given me an explanation as for each of the wrong options, why they are wrong, right? That's equally as important as ChatGPT providing me the solution analysis, because when you get an answer wrong, not only do you need to understand why the correct answer is correct, you also need to understand why you put the wrong answer. Why is that wrong? Because sometimes you do a question, you look at the right answer, you read the solution, you're still not convinced. I still think B is correct and A is not correct, or I still think C is correct and A is not correct, right? It's a very common phenomenon. So you need to appreciate not only why the right answer is right, but also why your incorrect answer is incorrect. So it's given us a text which is a similar difficulty to what we're looking at in the GAM style. It's giving us a question which is a similar difficulty, and it's providing the solutions and a breakdown of how to go against it. So if you're looking to use any AI tool to generate questions for section 1, absolutely useful, especially if you know your weaknesses and you really want to focus in on those weaknesses. So let's say, for example, like in this case, I wanted to focus on poetry. If I've just combed through the ASA questions and the DES questions or whatever, and I can't find any poetry, I can find whatever I want on an AI. So I'm just seeing a question in the chat here. Will you send the PowerPoint alongside the recording? So the PowerPoint I will be pasting into the Zoom chat right at the end today, but I will be able to, I think, send the PowerPoint as well, Naina, so that shouldn't be an issue. I know Zoom will automatically send over the recording. I'll just have to send the PowerPoints over as well, but I've got all you guys' emails, so that shouldn't be too hard. Okay.
Just a question, Rohan. Sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
So with this poem, it's an actual like legitimate poem, right? It's not like it made it up trying to mimic the Sandpiper poem.
No, it made it up. It
Oh, it
absolutely
made it up.
Yeah.
So this is not a actually written poem by like a poet or anything like that.
No, it made it up.
Yeah.
It's created it. Yeah. So you can actually, and if you wanted it to be a real one, so sometimes you might want it, sometimes you might not just like the output it's given you. So you could just say, don't create your own one, you know, you reference a real one, right?
Yeah.
I don't think that matters too much, because as long as you give it a proper prompt and you give it that example, it will know what to base it off, right?
Fair enough.
So it's up to you. That's a personal preference thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but this one is fictional.
No worries. Thanks.
All good. Okay. Do we have any questions on generating MCQs for section 1? Or any questions on why A is the right answer here? No, we're happy with that. Okay, let's move on. So let me introduce you to Sam. Sam is basically an encapsulation of like 90% of my section 2 students. So Sam comes to me and he says, I've always been a science student. I did a bit of English in high school, but now I study biomed in my undergrad degree. I've never really found politics, economics, or sociology interesting. I don't know what to talk about in my essays. So I speak to Sam, I have a conversation with him. I say, okay, well, let's work together for section 2. Let me help you. What have you been writing about so far? And Sam says, I always rely on the same examples. I talk about AI, I talk about climate change, I talk about Donald Trump. The reason I talk about these is because they feel easy to me, and it's just stuff I see on my reels and my TikToks, so I have a decent amount of knowledge. Now, I would estimate most of you guys in the call can to some extent relate to Sam. Nana, to answer your question regarding questions for all sections, you absolutely can. So like the techniques we just used to generate a question for section 1, you can use that for section 3 as well. Absolutely. Yeah. The use case for section 3 is a little bit different that we'll go through, but you could use the case 1 method for section 3 as well. Obviously, you could use it for prompts as well for section 2. I think that's less hard to generate as long as you're just getting something that's thematically consistent. You can use that as a section 2 prompt. But yeah, you can definitely use them for all 3 sections. Okay. So this is Sam's problem. He comes to me, he's struggling with his section 2 essays. I read his essays, they're okay. They're not bad, but they're okay. He's probably scoring about a 55 to 60 in GAMSAT section 2. He wants to lift that closer to 70, 75. So I tell Sam, I said, okay, before our next lesson, before the next time I speak to you, I want you to go ahead and I want you to give AI a go, just to help you with some examples, just to help you get some inspiration. So Sam opens up his AI, he opens up ChatGPT, and he types in, give me ideas to use in GAMSAT section 2. Now, before I even go to the next slide, again, I want you guys to break down for me what is wrong with this prompt.
It's too broad.
not
It doesn't
specific
specify
enough.
whether it's task A or B.
Very good. So it doesn't specify task A or task B. It's too broad. I heard someone else say something as well.
It's just
No.
not specific enough to the idea that they might be talking about. So depending on the concept that they want to generate ideas of, like it doesn't give you any of that information. So it might just
Yeah, very
throw,
good.
I don't know, random ideas from anywhere.
Absolutely. It's going to be random. Okay. Now, Sam's already told me he doesn't really know a lot about politics, economics, or sociology. So if I'm teaching Sam as a tutor and I'm going to help him come up with ideas, I have to make sure ideas I give him are things he's actually going to understand and find interesting or relevant. If I give AI this prompt, it doesn't know that. It's just going to spit out random stuff. So let's have a look at what AI spits out as in response. So it says, here's a list of GAMSAT section 2 idea banks you can draw from across common themes, each with high utility thinkers, events, concepts, and examples. These are designed to be reused flexibly across many prompts. So it goes through task A, it gives me power and corruption, justice and law, freedom of speech and censorship. Okay. And then it gives me these random dot points underneath it. Lord Acton said power tends to corrupt. Orwell's 1984. Big tech surveillance. Whistleblowers. Okay. All 4 of those points to Sam mean nothing. He doesn't know who Lord Acton is. He's never read 1984 Animal Farm. He doesn't really know a lot about big tech surveillance, and he doesn't know what a whistleblower is. So now Sam's more confused. He doesn't really know what he's learning. He gets the idea of power of corruption being relevant here, but he doesn't really understand how those 4 things come together at all. He also doesn't really care about justice and law. It just doesn't find it interesting. And in terms of freedom of speech and censorship, he doesn't know who Charlie Hebdo is. He's heard of cancel culture a couple of times because he sees it on social media sometimes. He knows Plato was a Greek philosopher, but he doesn't know what the relevance of his cave is. And he knows China's something happened in Tiananmen Square a while ago, but he doesn't really know what happened. Okay. So he's confused. He doesn't know how any of these points link together. He doesn't know their relevance. He doesn't know how to write an essay about any of these things. He doesn't know how to tailor these things to his existing examples. And he doesn't find any of this particularly interesting. So what Sam probably does at this point is he closes his laptop and he gives up studying. He just says, oh, it's too hard. And he comes to me next week and he says, Rohan, I tried using AI, but it just confused me more. And I asked him, I said, Sam, what did you ask AI? And he says, I just asked it to give me some ideas for section 2. Obviously, Sam didn't come to this workshop. So if he watched the workshop, this is how he would prompt the AI to give him some help with his section 2 ideas. So what I told Sam to do in this situation, I said, act as a tutor, act as someone that is creating these frameworks for you. So the prompt I've given him in this case, the prompt that Sam is providing the AI is act as an experienced GAMSAT Section 2 tutor who specializes in helping students generate sophisticated and reusable content for their essays. I'm looking for a curated list of high-yield ideas, thinkers, and examples that can be used flexibly in Task A. I particularly find Donald Trump as a president intriguing, but don't know how to add more depth or nuance to my discussion and link it into other political, economic, or social ideas. I've attached some of my previous writing on Donald Trump. Let me know if you need any clarification. And you can't see it's cut off there because I wanted to include more of the actual output. But I attached Sam's last essay, his last crappy essay. But we attached it in and I showed that to AI. So that's what we've already written about. Now let's look at the output. So ChatGPT says, thanks for sharing your writing, etc., etc. And then it offers me some high yield themes I can link into. So it's going through some of the same key points that it mentioned before, but notice the angle you can take section. That's really, really important. It's now linking in these ideas that previously confused Sam. He had no idea what they meant or what relevance they had. And now it's linking those angles in with his previous writing and with the ideas it's offering. So it's giving Sam a clear avenue for what to research and what to look into. Linking it to Trump, linking it to other things he mentioned in his essay so that he has a clear connection. So Sam's no longer confused. He's now actually interested. And he scrolls down and ChatGPT then offers him a whole bunch of thinkers and concepts to weave in. And for any of you guys, so some of you guys I know, come to my section 2 classes, I always talk about the importance of your thinkers, your level 3 evidence, the importance of including your philosophers and your psychologists to support your writing and give it more validity and credibility. And ChatGPT has literally come in here and it's given you those evidence nuggets. So it's given you Machiavelli, it's given you Weber, it's given you Hannah Arendt, it's given you George Orwell, John Stuart Mill, Plato, Thomas Hobbes. But again, it's not just giving you their names, it's giving you their key idea. And it's not just giving you the key idea, it's linked it to your existing research and interest in the presidency of Donald Trump. So now what I have is all this information, all these resources that give me 20 different things to start researching, but I fully understand the scope and the background and context as to how each of these things fits into my overall understanding and pursuit of writing better section 2. So I give this to Sam and I say, Sam, use this to improve your writing. And he uses it to improve his writing. He does a lot better. So coming back to our initial situation, what was Sam's problem? We've already been through that. Sam's prompt is in the middle. And this is how Sam has now improved. So Sam comes to me next week and he says, Rohan, I'm really grateful for helping me with the AI prompts. So after using AI to brainstorm ideas, Sam and I worked together to build a high-yield ideas bank tailored to Task A themes that Sam felt like he understood. We explored how to link Donald Trump's presidency to themes like power, populism, moral responsibility, and media manipulation, turning a surface-level example into a flexible argument. Importantly, I then gave Sam targeted feedback on how to elevate insights, avoid cliches, and write to the specific GAMSAT qualities that ASA rewards. So again, I just want to preempt here that the AI here is effective in providing us with an outlook of where we can head in terms of our research, an outlook of where we can research into, what we can look into. But you don't want to use the AI to directly give you feedback on your essay writing. For that, you're still going to need peer feedback, study group feedback, self-reflection, tutors, whatever it might be, okay? But it absolutely can do that first step for you in helping you understand what to write about and giving you ideas on what to research, linking into things you've already looked into and find interesting, okay? Any questions about how Sam boosted up his Section 2 performance by using AI?
Just a quick question, Rohan. It's not directly to your question, but
That's okay.
I mean, this is probably me being a bit too nitpicky, but let's say you've got two people, right, using ChatGPT or whatever, and they both put the exact same prompt, but then the output, I mean, I don't know how accurate this is. I'm not like an AI expert or anything, but would you say that the prompts they produce would be different depending on each person's history and what they've put in the past, or what they've input in the past? So it could, I guess, influence the output in that sense. Like if, let's say, for example, you and I, you know, you're into politics and you're into philosophy and whatnot, but I'm
Yep.
not so much into it. And you've been using AI to, you know, look up a lot of stuff on philosophy, politics, history, whatever. So based on that history of yours with AI, it's gonna produce outputs that sort of, based on the algorithm and whatever, mimic that history. Whereas for someone like me who's never used AI to research those things, the output would be different or less, I guess. I'm not sure how true this is. So get your
It's a great
opinion.
question. It's a very good question because this idea of memory is, I think it's the next innovation. It's the next update that's going to come to these AI platforms. It's already come quite strongly in ChatGPT. So anyone that uses ChatGPT knows that ChatGPT keeps track of your memory now. It can access any of the conversations you've had with it in the past to improve the ongoing conversation you're having with it today. So if I went to ChatGPT today and I asked it to help, if I just said to ChatGPT, help me with that topic I was struggling with yesterday in med school, it would know what I'm referring to because it remembers what I asked it for. Your question is relevant, but it depends on the prompt. Now, the prompt I've provided here, it wouldn't really matter what I had put into ChatGPT before. It wouldn't really change what it's just spit out. Now, the only thing I could suspect it changes, and it wouldn't be a major change, it would maybe be an addition of a particular row, or maybe changing one of those rows on the right-hand side, would be to link it into something you've already asked it about, potentially. So let's say, for example, for some reason, 2 days ago, I was talking to ChatGPT about, or I was asking about Socrates, the Greek philosopher. So instead of using Plato, it might use Socrates because it knows I'm more familiar with that. So if anything, it's just going to optimize it. It's not going to massively change this response because this response is pretty independent from anything I would have asked it before, anyone, because of how specific it is. So again, it comes back down to the quality of your prompt. If you make your prompt really specific, it will be specific. It won't fall into that memory trap as much because you're giving it the information it needs. The only time it will really force in the memory is if you don't give it enough information. So a prompt like this will probably trigger ChatGPT to search for your history and think about, okay, what has this person looked into before? Can I leverage that to help them look into something? In that particular case, yes, the memory would make a difference. But the more specific you make the prompt, the more detail you give it, the less it needs your memory.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Okay, all good. Any other questions on using ChatGPT for idea generation? Okay. So our last use case for section 3. Now, one of the things, now I don't teach section 3 directly. I do have a tutor that works with me that teaches section 3, and obviously I sat section 3 when I did section 3, back when I did the GAMSAT. This is a common kind of theme that you would see. In fact, this is kind of almost what I experienced when I did section 3, right? So This is Liz, another fictional student that we're talking through. And Liz says, I think I'm decent at section 3, but sometimes I get stuck on particular questions. I never did biology in school, and as an engineering student, I never covered it in my degree either. I'm looking for some help with biology. Okay. So again, I'm sure a lot of you guys can probably relate to Liz. Maybe even if you're biomed students, maybe it's not biology that you're struggling with, maybe it's physics. But regardless, we've all been in the situation where we need to study something for the GAMSAT, something we're not really familiar with, and we need to sort of go back down to first principles. Now, with section 3, obviously, I do want to maintain here that your sort of background knowledge is not massively important. It is going to help in terms of just giving you that speed and confidence. But most of the questions on the day can be answered without much sort of expertise in biology, chemistry, or physics. Nonetheless, there are some sort of basic ideas and concepts that you still want to understand. And let's say Liz had gone through and she'd done some questions on she'd done a STEM on iron and hepcidin regulation. For some of you guys doing biomed, this will make a lot of sense. I just picked this one because when I was making these slides at the same time in med school, we were talking about iron absorption. So let's say, for example, Liz did a GAMSAT section 3 question, and she just didn't really understand this concept of iron and hepcidin regulation. So she asked ChatGPT, she says, I don't understand iron and hepcidin regulation. Now, again, I want to ask you guys, so ChatGPT has come back and he's tried to explain iron and hepcidin regulation to Liz here. But why is this prompt and why is this output not really helping Liz at all? Give you guys a few seconds.
I think the answers kind of spat out as a bit way too technical for Liz to even understand, given that she's actually not done biology. So not knowing about those proteins and whatever else is there, like she's not even going to know what that is. So might need to break it down even further than that, like go back to the basics even more.
Very good. So it's assuming a lot. And that's because ChatGPT doesn't know how much Liz knows. So Liz hasn't told ChatGPT how confused she is. Hasn't told him or it where she's at with understanding any biology. So ChatGPT has to guess, basically. It might undershoot it, it might overshoot it, but it has to guess. Okay. The other thing is, as with anything you're looking at when you're like preparing for section 3, is you don't really want to focus on the theory. The theory is not really going to help you. What you want to focus on is the key high yield nuggets that you can then apply to actual GAMSAT questions. Because in the GAMSAT question, you're not being examined on theory, you're being examined on application of the theory or reasoning and deduction. And so just knowing a bunch of theory about like what enzyme is used in this pathway and what enzyme is used in that pathway itself is not of any value. But that's what ChatGPT is going to spit out. Because ChatGPT doesn't know it's asking anything to do with section 3 at this point. Okay. And like a few of you guys are saying in the comments, the prompt is too brief. It doesn't provide any context on that RCheck framework. It's just lacking a lot. Okay. So if we want to improve that prompt, this is what we could do. I keep getting confused about how iron regulation works in the body. Can you act as a GAMSAT section 3 exam question creator and help me understand this concept? In particular, I keep getting confused about the role of hepcidin. Like, for example, how hepcidin relates to iron levels. Is it proportional or inverse? Let me know if you want me to clarify any bits I'm confused with. Okay, so the role is there, the examples are there, the context is there, the clarification is there. So everything that we need to make this a stronger prompt is there. And we now know that whatever it covers is going to be focused on the GAMSAT. So let's have a look at what the AI spits out. Great question, and yes, let's tackle this GAMSAT section 3 way. Reasoning through novel information rather than rote memorization. So that right there is exactly what I was just referring to, because the previous prompt just got ChatGPT to go through that rote memorization stuff. So if we look at its substantive output on the right-hand side, it's the key mechanism it covers, which is iron regulation, hepcidin, and it just briefly covers hepcidin, very important iron absorption sites. It makes it a simple rule so I can just very quickly understand what I'm looking at, and it simplifies it. high epsilon equals low plasma ion, low hepcidin equals high plasma ion. Nice and simple, just the high yield nuggets I would need for a section 3 question. So now I want to follow that up, and now I want to give it a specific job, which is to make me some section 3 questions based on this topic I didn't understand, and now I'm starting to get a little bit of understanding on. Okay. So now based on this, can you create a realistic GAMSAT section 3 set of 3 questions, create the STEM with realistic length and difficulty, and then questions which test GAMSAT skills, whilst being a similar difficulty to those that ASA provide. I've shown you an example of the desired difficulty. So I've done the same thing I did before, which is give it a practice question so it gets some inspiration. And I've asked it to create a STEM in the exact way that I want it to. So now it's going to give me a question. Now it's a little bit cut off at the bottom, but that sentence is not really relevant. So now I'm going to give you guys a chance to give this a go. So again, I'm going to open the poll, give you guys some time to read the STEM, and give question 1 a go to start with. Okay, guys, another 30 seconds for this one. Okay, 5 more seconds. I'm going to end the poll. So just guess if you're not too sure. Educated guess. 3, 2, 1. All right, I'm going to end it there. Again, I know a lot of you guys didn't get a chance to pop an answer in. So this is a good question, okay? And unfortunately, the majority of you guys have got this one half correct because it's not C, although it is decreased serum iron levels. The answer is B. Let's have a look why. So we're looking and focusing on mouse A here. And we're told that mouse A is engineered to constitutively express high levels of hepcidin, regardless of systemic iron status. So there's an extra bit of hepcidin that's being used here. So to figure out what impact that's going to have, let's go scan back up and let's go find the part of the text that talks about hepcidin. So in the second paragraph, it says the liver plays a central role in systemic iron homeostasis by producing hepcidin, a hormone that acts as a negative regulator of iron export. Okay, and we know this because ChatGPT in its very simplistic description of iron told us more hepcidin equals less iron export. Okay, now from the first paragraph, it encapsulated the way that iron absorption works. In other words, iron goes through your gut, goes into the duodenum, it gets absorbed into these enterocytes, which are these like small cells that line your gut, and then it sits in that cell, and then it gets exported out of that cell into your bloodstream via ferroportin. That's a summary of what paragraph 1 told us. So paragraph 2 is telling us that hepcidin basically blocks ferroportin. So hepcidin binds to ferroportin and triggers its internalization and degradation. This effectively traps iron within intestinal cells and macrophages, reducing serum iron availability. So that part there should tell you that it's either B or C. Reducing serum iron availability means it's going to be decreased serum iron level. So B and C have to be the answer. Now the question is the decreased serum iron level due to accumulation of iron in enterocytes, which are those cells that line the gut, or due to reduced intestinal iron availability? All right. And that's where we look at that bit about the trapping of iron. Okay, so what's happening here basically is the iron is still getting absorbed in the gut, like we're told in paragraph 1, but the excessive hepcidin is basically blocking off that ferroportin. So the iron is getting into the enterocyte, it's getting through the gut, it's being absorbed in the gut, but the very enzyme, the protein that allows it, the hormone, sorry, that allows it to push into the bloodstream is now being blocked by hepcidin. So the iron is just going to load up into the cell. So that's why your answer, correct answer here is B. So good job to the two of you guys that put that. Okay, but that's the right answer. It's a really good GAMSAT question because what it's doing is it's testing, it's not really testing your knowledge about iron. It's not. Even if I didn't show you the previous slide, even if I didn't tell you anything about iron absorption, the information to get this question right is there. It's in the STEM. It's testing your thinking. It's testing your reasoning. It's testing your deduction skills. Okay. So B is the answer there. All right, let's have a look at question 5 here, which was the other one I chose to show you guys.
Just a quick question. We'll do the question first. Never mind. I'll ask after.
I'll take questions again. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay, 30 seconds. Five more seconds. So pop a guess if you're not sure. Okay, I'm going to close the poll up there. We have a perfect split here between A and C. So one of you guys is correct. Okay, let's have a look at A/C. So A says persistent hepcidin expression prevented compensatory downregulation of ferroportin, reducing intestinal iron uptake. Okay. C says hepcidin overexpression prevented iron mobilization from stores, impairing erythropoiesis despite normal EPO response. Now, what we're being asked to think about here is a reduction in, a reduction in hemoglobin recovery, but specifically a lack of increase in serum iron levels compared to, let's say, the wild type mice, which is like your control group here. Okay. Now, again, if we take the information that's been provided to us here about erythropoietin, EPO, as well as the information provided to us earlier, we can see that the answer is C. Okay. So let's think about the mechanism of everything that we've been shown and link it in here with why C is correct. So hepcidin overexpression, which is we know that's the focus of what mouse A is examining, hepcidin overexpression, is preventing iron mobilization from stores, which we also know. That was a focus of what we did in question 1. So when there's too much hepcidin, it's blocking off your ferroportin. And when it blocks off your ferroportin, you can't get the iron out of the enterocyte, the gut cell, can't get it out of that cell and into the blood. So it's stuck in the cell. So the hepcidin overexpression is preventing the iron mobilization. And we know that we need the iron mobilization for the EPO level. The EPO levels are linked with the iron mobilization level. We see that in the question where it describes the relationship with the wild type mice. So if there is less iron being mobilized, it's impairing this process of erythropoiesis, this process of creating red blood cells and creating hemoglobin, even though we have the normal EPO response. So that's why C is correct here. Now, in terms of B, persistent hepcidin expression prevented compensatory downregulation of ferroportin. So there's not a lot of evidence there to support that. That might be true in terms of feedback loops or compensatory mechanisms, but it's not something we're directly told. We're also not specifically shown the relationship between ferroportin and intestinal iron uptake. Okay. So A is one that logically might make sense, and you might be able to weasel your way through it if you know what's happening with the biomedicine here, and if you've studied this before, maybe. But if we're purely taking what we know and what we've been told, C is the most supported with the evidence here. So that's an example of the question kind of almost using those common GAMSAT traps of, okay, hang on a sec, are you using information from the STEM or are you using information from what you know? And question 5 is a step above question 1 in terms of difficulty here. It's a lot more applicative, which is good because you need the different levels of questions as well, which is what the AI is providing with us. Okay. Ayman, I'll come back to you now. What was your question from before?
I had a couple of questions, man. Sorry.
That's okay. Go for it. That's what we're here for.
So in terms of, uploading like an example of questions into the AI system so for it to try and mimic, there's a lot of talk nowadays about like the ASAP materials not mimicking section 3 particularly. Like section 3 just being a lot more difficult and a lot less theory, a lot more just analysis, graphical analysis, and that like the ASAP practice papers don't do it enough justice in terms of mimicking that. So if that's all you've got, then like, are you sort of stuck in that situation? Or, I mean, do you agree with that in the first place as well?
Partially. I agree with it partially. So the old ASA papers, so I'm thinking practice questions, sample questions, practice test 1 and practice test 2 are pretty much irrelevant now. I probably would put them behind the AI generated questions, right? Practice test 3 is still okay. And then the online tests that have recently come out are still okay because they're more recent. They're still not tremendously accurate. And I think that's a flaw on ACE's end because they haven't been able to create resources that directly replicate. But it's still better than the older ones. So I would stick to the more modern ACE papers. I still think they're the best we have for section 3. Yeah.
What about with DES? Would you say DES mimics
DES
system?
DES is great for section 1, but I wouldn't go, I mean, unless you're very selective with the questions you do, I wouldn't do DES. Now, one thing you could, this is another use case of AI as well, is you could take, let's say, a chapter of DES, make it into a PDF, chuck it into AI, and then give it practice test 3 and say, I'm looking for questions from this DES chapter that are the same style of the section 3 questions in practice test 3. Can you tell me which units I should focus on? And it might say do unit 3, unit 6, or unit 9. So then at least you can do the ones that are appropriate. Because there are still some good questions in Des. There absolutely are. There's some good graphical questions there. But it's just it's a needle in the haystack. There's a lot of crap out there in Des now
Yeah.
because Des is old. Des is like 15 years old. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there was a Reddit post, I think, on the relevant stems units and stuff. So
Great.
if people want
Use
to
that
check it
then.
out.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, perfect. And that's anyone else listening, that's a great post to probably look at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
Good.
my other quick question is,
Yep.
like with this question, for example, like ideally, in terms of like figuring out what's going on, sort of reasoning your way through it and like just absorbing the information and understanding it,
Yep.
comprehending it. Like for you personally, like, do you think it's okay to be taking notes down to try and figure out what the hell's going on, or would you have just reasoned through it or just mentally note taking? Because there's a lot going on.
It's not only okay, it's recommended. So, I mean, to me, because I've spent the last 3 days or so doing a lot of hematology, a lot of red blood cell stuff, a lot of hemoglobin stuff, a lot of iron regulation stuff. So when I read this stem and I did the questions and I set them up before today's session, I was like, okay, this isn't too bad. But if I was doing this 3 days ago, or if I was doing this when I was doing the GAMSAT, what I would do is I would try, and this is what would work for me. And again, this is because I'm a bit more of a visual learner in that sense, is I would almost take the information here, like the relationship between hepcidin and the relationship between ferroportin and iron absorption and everything. And I would almost create like a sketch of like a bit of a diagram or a flow chart almost of what's happening here. What's
Yeah.
increasing, what's decreasing, what's flattening something else. How is ferroportin related to hepcidin? How is hepcidin related to iron absorption? You want to kind of demonstrate that or visualize that for yourself so that when you're doing the questions, those connections are clearer in your head, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. Not only is it okay, it's definitely recommended. And that's why you have the note, the
Yeah.
paper and the
Paper.
whiteboard or whatever you use,
Yeah.
is to just help you get those things down. Because there's a lot of junk, there's also a lot of value. You need to be able to separate out the junk and the value from the stems as well.
Yeah. Last question.
Go for it.
I hope. In terms of like section 1, section 2, using AI, let's say you're using a stem from section 1 or you're using IDs or whatever for section 2 that are related to like morality and ethics, and
Yeah.
you're putting that into AI. Like I do find, based on also other people's anecdotal experiences, that
Mhm.
like with ethics and morality, like if we consider something immoral and you ask AI to justify it in a moral sense, it will do it as well, and it will give you a
Yep.
pretty good answer on the fact that it is actually ethical and moral. And if you ask the
Yep.
other way around, the other side, then it will also justify that. So, like, how do you get around that? What's your thoughts on that, especially for
Well,
section
I
2?
think of that as a strength of AI rather than a negative. So what it allows you to do is to see unique and different perspectives expressed in a way which fits, let's say for section 2, it fits the mold. So for example, if I wanted to write an essay about, let's go back to the Donald Trump example, right? So let's say this student who wrote a pretty, Sam, wrote a pretty critical essay about Donald Trump. And Sam wants to feel like his essays are pretty polished and well-rounded. So he wants to make sure that he's covering all possible counter arguments as well. So Sam will ask AI and he says, I want you to take my essay writing style and I want you to write an exemplar GAMSAT section 2 essay based on this exemplar and this exemplar and this exemplar, but I want you to praise the presidency of Donald Trump throughout. So it will do that, right? As you said, it will do whatever you want it to do. It will go pro, it will go anti, and it will do it convincingly, right? So use that duplicitous side of AI to your advantage to see unique expressions. Like you won't find an essay like that anywhere on the internet where someone is just going 100% all in praising Donald Trump in an exemplar GAMSAT essay. You won't see that anywhere on the internet.
Mm.
But if AI can generate that for you, you can start to see how some of those arguments shape. And then you can either A, adapt your response, or B, you can borrow some of those points and add them as counter arguments into your own writing.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's going to show both sides. He's going to try and sort of, you want to stick to one
Yeah, you
side,
wanna-
but you want to sort of give leeway to the other side as
You
well.
want to provide a balanced argument, and you want to make sure that you're coming across as someone that can see both sides and appreciates the counter arguments, but still nonetheless has a clear stance. Yeah, absolutely.
No worries. Thank you.
My pleasure. So very quickly, just to go over this again, limitations of AI. It's not going to be able to give you personalized feedback on your specific unique weaknesses. There's also no accountability here. Okay. So you could just ignore AI. You could just not rock up and go to chatgpt.com that day. You can't ignore friends. You can't ignore study groups. You can't ignore tutors. The accountability you get from those people is significantly higher than that from AI. There's also a risk of over-reliance here. Okay. So I don't want you guys over-reliant on AI generation for section 2 or explaining concepts in section 3. If you become over-reliant, that's actually going to be detrimental. Okay. And the other thing is, if you do end up paying for it, it can be costly. It's up to $30 a month. So I pay $30 a month for ChatGPT Plus. Personally, I find it worth it, but you know, it's not cheap. Okay. So it can be expensive as well. All right. So we're pretty much at the end here. Now, before we finish and before I go on to just the final Q&A and before we finish up, I just want to quickly talk about a couple of exclusive offers that I've got for you guys running until the end of the month. So there's 3 in particular. These are basically the biggest discounts I've ever done on any of these products. So on the left-hand side is the Section 2 Expert Essay Collection. So this is 25 of my highest scoring practice essays covering a whole range of themes on Task A and Task B. The purpose of that, as it says in my last dot point there, is use the collection for inspiration, for your own idea generation and clear examples. And you can also use it with ChatGPT. So you can pop an exemplar into ChatGPT, and then you can get ChatGPT to give you idea generations and give you sort of sample essays based off those exemplars as well. So that way ChatGPT is giving you some GAMSAT specific stuff rather than you risking it going off too much off course. So that's usually $99. It's down to $74, so $25 off. And you can use the code EssaysAI at checkout. My most popular offering is my e-course called the Mastery course, which has 50 plus hours of recorded video content, which come directly from my GAMSAT classes. Again, this is the cheapest I've ever made it and probably ever will make it. Usually $349 down to $249. There's 15 section 1 modules, 15 section 2 modules covering basically everything you need if you're getting started with GAMSAT. And then for those of you guys looking for the full cookie, the full biscuit, a product I recently launched, which is Rohan's GAMSAT Blueprint, which basically has everything I have ever taught for GAMSAT. So it has 80 hours of video content, plus it comes with the expert essay collection. It's usually $599. That is $150 off, down to $449 till the end of the month with code Blueprint AI. So that has the mastery course that's in the middle there. It also has 30 extra hours from my advanced series. So that's specifically targeting students that are trying to go from a good mark to like a great mark. So, 95th percentile and above. Again, these discounts are active until the end of the month. They're the cheapest any of these 3 products have been and probably ever will be. So if you are interested, the codes are on the screen and the hyperlinks are there on the slides, although I'm just going to paste a link into the chat as well, because in addition to these, I've also got a couple of free resources as well. So I've got a blog as well on my website, which has a couple of really good articles for those of you guys just looking for some free content. And I've also got a YouTube channel as well, where I upload, again, just videos covering things like we did today for you guys to use for your study. Okay, so that is pretty much the end of the workshop. Now, I'm going to go back to the mentee if anyone's put in any extra questions. And I know a couple of questions have come in the chat as well, so I'll stick around and answer those. I will probably call it in about 10-15 minutes, but I'm happy to stick around for a bit of time and answer those questions. So I think I answered the first 6 of these. Okay, so for those working full-time, what's the best way to schedule study around personal life as well without burnout? It's not, okay, good question. So I actually sat the GAMSAT whilst I was working full-time. So short story about me, I didn't do biomed. I did economics and commerce in uni. I majored in finance. and I was a finance bro for 3 years. And I was a finance bro whilst I sat the GAMSAT. So I did the GAMSAT full time, whilst working full time, sorry. So I know the struggle. My suggestion to you is figure out if you're a morning or evening person. For me, I quickly realized I'm a morning person. I work much better in the morning versus the night. So when I would go to work and I'd come back at 7 p.m. and I tried to sit in front of my computer at 8 p.m. to study, it just wouldn't work, right? I'd just be fried. All I'd want to do at that point is just, crawl together or, cuddle in a corner of my sofa and watch some Netflix or whatever. So for me, it was about scheduling a couple of hours of study, my intensive study in the morning. So often one thing I would do is if I'm working full time is I would try and work from home as much as you can because it just gives you more time to study. So I would work from home about 3 days a week and then in the office 2 days a week. And the days I was working home, it was great. I'd study basically from about 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. and then I'd work. And for the days I had to go in, I'd basically just do 6 to 8. Right. And that would just be 2-3 hours of super intense study, like literally not touching my phone, not wasting any time, just sitting down and knowing that, okay, this is the only study I'm doing today, but I'm going to make the bloody most out of it. If you're someone that's a night person, great, go to work, come home, and then do your work in the night. Okay. But finding that 2-3 hour block in your day where you can just go all out on your study is really, really important. Balance is also really important. Okay. So don't forget about seeing friends. Don't forget about spending time with family. Go to the gym, do some exercise. So for me, I would go to the gym a couple times a week. I would play football with my mates. So play soccer with my friends on Saturday and train on Thursday nights. Still do that. What you don't want to do is make your whole life centered around GAMSAT or work because that's when the burnout will kill you. Okay. So that balance is really important. But yeah, working full time is tricky. Absolutely sympathize with it. The winter of 2022 will not be forgotten because it was a bloody nightmare. It was tough. What are your thoughts on DeepSeek? Yeah, DeepSeek's okay as well. I haven't used a lot of DeepSeek, but I know it's free, so I know it's a good resource out there. Again, play around with it. One thing you can do if you're not sure about it is just like try a few prompts across different platforms because they all have free versions. So you can try different prompts and then because different AIs will format their answers differently, they'll set their answers up differently. So think about how it's presenting it and then you can kind of go from there. Okay. But yeah, definitely could give DeepSeek a go. What resources is best to use for each section, or is AI enough to prepare? So AI is definitely not enough altogether. I would say for section 1, the ASA questions are great. The DES questions are great if you can get your hands on them. And then AI is good for your practice questions. For section 2, I would be using obviously your prompts that ASA gives you. In terms of learning and researching ideas, I've got some good YouTube videos. Again, shameless plug, but there's the most recent YouTube video I posted is tackling a really high yield idea of neoliberalism, which is one of 4 or 5 different ideas I talk about extensively in my classes. But it's just a 10-minute snapshot of basically neoliberalism and how you can turn it into a gold mine for your essays. So it's a really good video to have a look at. In terms of books or articles, just make sure you're scrolling the news and making sure you're aware of what's happening in the world and try and link it in with these ideas that's happening. So, like we saw with Sam's example, he's taking that Trump example and he's linking it to a whole variety of things that are happening. And then for section 3, ACE is good, DES is not so good. Gold standard, I don't know. I haven't used gold standard myself, so I can't speak for it. I've heard hit and miss things though from other students. So your mileage may vary, but I think it's probably better than nothing. And I think like anything, any prep is better than anything. I think that we often get stuck in this cycle of trying to optimize everything a bit too much. Like gold standard might not be 100% as good as ASA, but it's probably 70%, 60%, 80%, somewhere there, which is still better than 0%. But if you can get your hands on the ASA practice questions and quizzes, even if you have to pay a little bit for it, I do think it's worth it. If you guys are forking out like $500-$600 for the exam, I do think it's worth getting your hands on those ASA papers. It's just the best quality prep you're going to get for the questions. Yeah. Is it true that international students applying to med schools need fewer marks on average than domestic students? You are not asking the right guy, my friend. I believe so because you guys are applying through basically a different cohort almost. So you're competing against different people. So to my understanding, yes, you are usually looking at fewer marks. What mark you're specifically needing, I can't answer that, unfortunately. Yeah, you're probably asking the wrong person because I'm a domestic student. But I do know that you're competing with other international students. So it's a whole different kettle of fish. I'm assuming that means I'm sitting the GAMSAT in September and haven't started. What is the best way to start? I would point you to my introductory videos on YouTube. They're pretty short and they just give you a really quick overview of what you need to be doing and where you need to be going from. In particular, I'd go and look at the 1.5 hour Section 1 and Section 2 masterclass I uploaded. I think that's a great way to start. And then if you feel like you need extra help, there's obviously tutors like myself out there, or it's just about kind of using things like AI like we went through today and putting it all into practice. So that would be my suggestion, is just figuring out what you need to do, and videos like that masterclass is a good place to start. Okay, what is the difference between theme A and theme? I assume that's task A and task B in terms of instead of philosophers. Can you share personal anecdotes? Okay, so I mean, not to step too much on the toes of the masterclass, which goes in through the proposed structure I recommend for task A and task B. Personal anecdotes work really well, but they work particularly well in task B. Philosophy and psychology are two things I would absolutely encourage all of you guys to invest some time into researching and embedding into your writing. It really lifts the quality up. It's one of the core tenets of what I teach for Section 2, is really getting those. And it's not just about name dropping a bloke into your essay. It's really about understanding their theories and molding your analysis with it as well. But very valuable, and that would apply for task A and task B. Basically, task A is socio-cultural in nature and focus. So you'll focus on more social, economic, and political issues. And then task B themes will be a bit more personal. So they'll be around things like different emotions like love, jealousy, happiness, joy, things like that. Okay. So that's all our mentee questions. Now I'm quickly just going to go through our chat. I know I've missed a few things here, so let's have a look. I know we're getting pretty late, guys. I appreciate you all sticking around. Okay, great, Diksha. So, yep, looks like gold standard is good for Section 1. So, yep, definitely look into it if you can get your hands on it. Can you memorize 4 to 5 examples and use them for any themes given on the example? To score. So, Jill, my position on this is I absolutely think it's worth having a couple of, when you say examples, I would more think of them as lenses or frameworks to apply to essays. And there are certain things that are so high yield and so ubiquitous in the world that basically any essay you get on them, you can mold them around. And particularly if you understand those ideas well, it becomes a piece of cake. So for me, talking about capitalism and economics was a piece of cake personally, but that's because I did it for my degree. I did an honors degree in it. I did a thesis on it. It was really down my street, right? For most of you guys, capitalism and that kind of stuff, it's probably something you've heard of, maybe done a little bit of reading on, but it's probably not that thing that you know really well. So my suggestion is find that thing that you know well, find something that you know applies widely, let's say in task A, and learn it to an extent that you can apply it to a whole bunch of different topics, because as long as it's still applied to the topic on the day, you'll still score well. But if you have that area of expertise, it will just help you feel a bit more confident in your discussions. Okay. The mark that ChatGPT gives for my essay, is it somewhat? No, I wouldn't. Honestly, I wouldn't put much weight on those marks that ChatGPT. So that's the other. I didn't mention this with marking essays, and this is why I said try not to use ChatGPT to mark essays, because sometimes it will try and give you a mark, but it has no idea of the marking scheme. As we all know, ACE's marks that it give you for Section 1, Section 2, Section 3 don't really mean anything, right? So if you get a 70 in Section 1, does that mean you scored 70%? No. Does that mean you're 70 percentile? No. Who knows what it means, right? No one really knows. ChatGPT doesn't know either. Okay, so I would not absolutely take much weight on the marks that it gives you. I got only 59 in the first sitting for Section 2. I did not memorize any quotes. I didn't incorporate any in my essay. Do you recommend I memorize some quotes? Yes. So as I said, looking into philosophy and psychology is super high yield and worthwhile doing. And my suggestion is, as you go through, pick a couple of theories, philosophies, psychologists that you really find interesting and you resonate with, and then maybe learn one quote from them just to have in your back pocket. And I guarantee you that if you learn these things well, you'll see that embedding them into your essays is a lot easier than it might initially feel. And learning, let's say, 5 quotes is a really good use of your time, because even if you can embed 1 or 2 of them in, it just lifts that writing up, like right up. It makes a huge, huge difference if you can take that philosophical approach. Okay. How in depth do you have to be in section 2 when talking about examples? Do you have to have exact statistics? For example, if I were to talk about Taj Mahal built by Shah Jahan, do I have exact dates? Okay, so there's a lot going on there. So exact statistics, do you need them? No. Can they help? Absolutely. How in depth do you have to be with section 2? The more in depth, the better. So the more specific, the better. And specificity is, again, one of those core tenets I teach about in section 2 all the time. If you feel like you're being vague and broad and general, you're just going to run into a wall of, genericness. So try and be as in depth as you can, Nana, is my suggestion. I think we've gone through all the questions, which is great. There's one more. Would you recommend including a rebuttal body paragraph for task 8? No, so that I don't teach a rebuttal body paragraph. I have a very a simpler structure for task 8 that I teach, which is basically introduction, 2 body paragraphs, and a conclusion. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't consider rebuttals or counter arguments in your essay. You absolutely should, but you should embed it into your argument to strengthen your argument, right? So the example I always give is if I wanted to convince someone to go to the gym, I could either A, say, hey, you should go to the gym because it's good for you, or I could B, say, hey, you should go to the gym. It's really good for you. I know that it's hard to find the time, but even if you can just go for 10 minutes, 15 minutes and do 3 sets, it's still better for you, right? So what I've done there is I've strengthened my argument of convincing you to go to the gym, but basically predicting the counter argument you're going to give me, which is that I don't have time, and then still embedding that into my argument to make my argument stronger. So I'm saying, yeah, okay, you might not have time, but just go for 10 minutes, because even going for 10 minutes is better than not going, right? Or you might say, I can't go to the gym because it's too expensive. Okay, cool. Even if you can't go to the gym and you can't afford it, just do some push-ups at home, do some squats at home. Even that is better for you, because ultimately the benefit of going to the gym is not going to the gym, it's exercise, right? So you want to absorb the counter argument into your main argument to make it even stronger. That's what I teach in terms of counter arguments. But yes, you don't need a separate paragraph for it. All right, last question from Tadenda. For section 2, do you recommend having dedicated idea generation sessions, or weaving essay writing and planning into the idea generation sessions, if that makes sense? I'm not sure I understand what you mean by idea generation sessions, Tadenda. Can you explain that?
Yes, of course. So I was just curious because when I'm studying for section 2, I get bogged down in just trying to understand like the specific like political, social, cultural ideas, and I don't really end up writing. I'm more so I'm just down in understanding these principles.
Yep.
Or am I better off having like the ace of prompts there next to me, writing an essay, and then from that essay generating ideas using the AI, if that makes sense. Essentially, I'm looking to sort of see the best way to lead the idea generation into planning and writing the actual essay, like the most high use way to study, if that makes sense.
Okay, I'm gonna say that I don't know if this was just me, but the audio is a little muffled there, Tadenda. So I think I heard most of what you said, but there was a part there where it kind of almost sounded like you were underwater. But I'll try my best to answer it. So, idea generation is important, but on its own, it's not going to do anything. So you could be a genius, you could be a philosophy major at university, but if you don't know how to put it into the writing, it's not going to be worth anything. So you need to balance your time. You need to spend time building your ideas, but you also have to spend time writing essays, planning essays, and practicing essays, because without that, you're not going to get much value, right? So it is definitely a balance. But doing both is important. You can't just do one, you need to do both. Great essay writing without good ideas is going to score poorly. Great ideas without good essay writing is also going to score poorly. You need to be able to do both. Okay. Okay, well, thank you all for joining me tonight. I do appreciate you taking your time out, and I'm hoping I've offered you guys a new outlook on your study and answered some questions. I have all those resources in the chat if you're interested, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to, and I'm keen to hear some feedback on how you felt the session went. The recording will be processed by Zoom whenever Zoom decides to process the recording, and will be sent out to you as long as you've registered. So feel free to watch it back. But otherwise, enjoy your evening, guys. The PowerPoint, yes, the PowerPoint. Good reminder.
Rohan, do you mind also linking the tracker that you mentioned earlier? Like the section 3 tracker. I've already got
The
section.
section 3 tracker. Yes, let me grab it up for you. Give me 1 minute.
Thank you.
Slides are just uploading now, guys. Yep, they're in the chat. And where did I put this tracker? It's somewhere on my Google Drive. There it is. Copy link. Bang. All right, so section 3 tracker is in the chat. And I'll get the section 1 one as well. For those that don't have it. Copy link. Here we go. All right, so both of the trackers are in the link, in the chat, sorry. The slides are there as well. And let me just repaste those links from before as well. YouTube, blog, essay marking, the blueprint, mastery course, and essays collection are all there as well. So if you need any of those links, they're there. Otherwise, as I said, thank you all for coming. I do appreciate it. Let me know if you've got any questions or if you've got any feedback. And I wish you all the best of luck for the upcoming sitting, or if you're not sitting the upcoming one, then in March, sorry.
Thanks, Rohan.
Thanks, Rohan. Take it easy.
You too. Thanks, guys.